I'm talking to Henry Juskowitz, the chairman and CEO of Gibson Guitar Corporation, one of the top American brands that's really probably known around the world for making guitars like the Les Paul and other guitars. Anyone who's a guitarist or a music fan has certainly heard of Gibson. And we're talking about the raid that the government did yesterday, August 24th, on Gibson. And Mr. Juskowitz, thanks a lot for taking the time.
Sure, I'm happy to.
So let's just talk about how did this start? How did your problems with the federal government start here, or your awareness of them?
Well, the first we knew we had a problem was in November of 2009 when we were having a key executive retreat, and we got a call that Homeland Security was raiding our guitar factory. And at first we thought it was a practical joke, but the panic in people's voices told me that, it was for real. And so I immediately jumped in my car and went down to the factory, and sure enough, there were, several dozen SWAT-attired people with automatic weapons and bulletproof vests, and they had evacuated the plant and made all the employees stand out in the parking lot. They had grabbed several of the employees, put them in small interrogation rooms with 4 or 5 armed people, and were verbally, intimidating them. And then they went about and confiscated, almost $500,000 worth of wood and some guitars, and they wouldn't tell us why. I personally went up to agents and said, "What is this about? Why are you here? And what do you want?" And their response is, "We can't tell you. That's sealed." And so that's the most we knew for months. We still
you had no communication. This just came out.
No warning. No, we're doing something wrong. No, we're having a problem. It's just an ordinary day, and all of a sudden, we're treated like drug criminals.
Now, and so subsequently, what have you found? I mean, what have you learned?
Well,
that was 2009.
There have been no actions. We haven't been charged with any wrongdoing yet. So the activity that did take place is several months ago, we sued the government to get our material back, and we have the right to do that. We filed a federal court case here in Nashville, Tennessee, and we are in the process of proving that that material is acquired and is legal. And it is my view that the reason we got raided the second time, i.e. yesterday, is because there is a hearing for that court case where we are showing compelling evidence that we have had no wrongdoing. And the government is trying to intimidate us into copping the plea.
And so, what are they saying that you did? Have they told you what you've done wrong?
Well, only indirectly in this court case, okay? And in the court case where we and remember, that's about us getting back the material that they confiscated in the original raid. The issue is this, which is almost laughable to me. We use something called a fingerboard in a guitar, and that fingerboard is made out of wood, and we buy that fingerboard in a processed manner. In other words, it's not raw wood. It's 2/3 of the way to a fingerboard, and that's the way it's purchased. and has been for decades, right? So the government's contention is that because American workers are working on that and finishing it, that it is not a finished product, and therefore, initially Madagascar law, now I guess they're contending Indian law, says you can't remove unfinished product from the market. So, in other words, if a person in Madagascar had completed the work on that blank, it would be legal. But the fact that American workers are completing the work in the United States makes it illegal as far as the U.S. government is concerned.
And is that, I mean, is there some trade agreement or something like that, or is there some?
That is the government's position is that is the law of the land in Madagascar. And they are saying that's the law of the land in India. That's not the case. The fact is we have affidavits from numerous government officials, and this court case specifically is now for Madagascar wood. We have, affidavits from virtually every government official saying that it is legal, that their definition of what is legal is a fingerboard blank, and it's been exported within every certification that is necessary. So they have the arrogance to interpret Madagascar law differently than the people in Madagascar.
Now, and just so people know, too, I mean, I mentioned a little bit about, who Gibson is and the guitar brands like, the Les Paul brand, which is, one of the absolute most best-known brands really all over the world. If you say Les Paul to any musician or music fan, they know what a Les Paul looks like, and they know who plays them and everything else, and that's just one of the brands that Gibson has. But you acquired Gibson. You as a businessman acquired Gibson in the late '80s, correct? And it was a failing U.S. company that you've been able to turn around, correct?
It was in bad shape. Japanese manufacturers were dominating the guitar business. Fender had closed all U.S. production at that point in time and was only manufacturing in Japan. Those were sad days for guitar manufacturers in the United States, and the Gibson factory was the only one that was really producing any great amount of guitars, and they were only producing maybe 50 guitars a day at that time, a very, very modest amount in comparison to the rest of the world production. There was a very good possibility before we acquired the company that it would go bankrupt.
And so you, especially at a time when everyone's talking about how the U.S. really is missing a manufacturing economy, and particularly a quality manufacturing economy, not just putting out shoddy product, but putting out quality American products that people around the world are really willing to pay a premium for, and people at home. For anyone who doesn't know guitars at all, when you say a guitar is American made, that means something. And it just means the quality's higher. And you guys, you have 2 factories in the U.S., and you said you've been hiring people, right?
Well, we have more than that. We have actually 4 major guitar factories in the United States. We have one in Bozeman, Montana, where we make our famous acoustic guitars. We have a factory in Memphis, Tennessee, and we have 2 factories. We have our main, what we call USA plant, and then we have our custom division in Nashville. So over the last 2 years, we have hired about 580 workers. During the recession, and tough times, we have been continuously hiring American workers for manufacturing, and 60% of our revenue, our sales, are outside of the United States. So we're a major exporter of goods.
That's very, and so you must be very, like, I don't know what to say, as a business person, you just must be dumbfounded. I'm sure you've had to deal with, the government quite a bit over the years.
Well, not too much, actually, and that's the way we just want to do our work, and the government hasn't been, in the past, hasn't been abusive, and they certainly haven't, but we did the work, and we were allowed to succeed, if you will, and that's really cool. This is the first time that we are facing, sort of the federal bureaucracy and sort of silliness. And so, the situation we're facing, Lee, is that we have not been accused of anything. They have not. There's no cause of action. We have gone to court, not the government, to get our goods back, and the government, in one of the aspects of this case, is the government is now saying that they do not want to complete this court case, that they have made a motion before the judge to stay the case on the pretext that the case is interfering in their investigation somehow, so that we can't even get our day in court, which is, somewhat ironic.
Now, is there anything people can do to help you? I mean, aside from going out and buying a Les Paul, is there anything short term, which is never a bad idea, by the way, but is there anything people can do to let their congressman know, or is it not at that point? Or
no, I think that, I think the issue is, what does one do when a federal bureaucracy is sort of out of control? What are your options? And there are none. There are none. Our business has been injured. Our factory has been shut down, and we have been threatened with a total business being shut down. And who do you go to say, well, look, we have done nothing wrong? Who do we prove to that we've done nothing? Where can we send evidence? Where's our we're convicted, and we don't have a venue. We haven't had a jury. We haven't had a trial. And, that's just not right. So what people could do, the only thing we can ask for is people to call and their legislators and say that's wrong. That just shouldn't happen. It's not just Gibson. It shouldn't happen to anyone. That our country is about due process, and we haven't had the benefit of due process. And in the one instance where we're pursuing legal recourse, the government is refusing to follow through on a case. So, we could just appeal to public opinion and hope that if enough people call, enough legislators, there could be an impact on the big mechanism of government.
Right. Well, yeah. No. It sounds like a horrible situation, and I wish you luck with it. Thanks very much for taking the time.
Sure. Thank you, Lee. And buy a Les Paul is a good idea.